Welcome here to the FWA review, where I'm delighted to be joined by Fifield, football correspondent for The Guardian, to really recap on what's been an extraordinary week of European action. Which has been the most surprising to you? Manchester United progressing with a scoreline never done before, coming back from 2 goals or more down from a first leg, or Real Madrid out at the hands of Ajax?
United purely because of PSG's status at the moment, the authority that they'd had in the first game in particular, and this incredible home record in European competition that had stretched back for God knows how long. Just didn't see, for all that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had this amazing effect at United, I just didn't see that happening, because it was just unfathomable, but they performed so well, and it was almost as if, you don't want to accuse the team of being complacent, but it was almost as if PSG had seen Real Madrid go out the night before and thought there's a route here that's opening up before us into the latter stages of this tournament, and a bit of complacency crept in, because actually it was Arsene Wenger, wasn't it? He I think he was on beIN Sport doing the pre-match sort of preview of it, suggested that Kimpembe might be a bit of a weak link, and that that PSG possibly aren't at the same level that they were a few months back. Obviously Neymar's absence, Cavani only fit enough for the bench, but even so, what a performance from a United team that's depleted in itself. It was absolutely astonishing, and for all the controversy over the third goal, the drama was something else.
Yeah, it's Ollie time now, apparently. The handball, though, the differences between the rules and the regulations from nations to Europe, would you like to see now there be one clear route for VAR, or does every league have to have its own independent point of view?
Well, no, you'd want uniformity, clearly. I think VAR for me is going to take some of the drama out of football, personally speaking. You're outraged when your own team gets denied a goal, or a goal is given against your team for offside, and it should have been disallowed. But those are the sort of moments that of controversy that spark debate and almost get the juices flowing as well. I don't mind the principle of everything being right, but I just think it will remove some of the drama of it. I mean, even the last few days we've seen almost the excitement of a goal being scored. I mean, Ajax in particular, on the Tuesday there was a goal scored, and the referee checked it just to see whether the ball had gone out of play for a throw-in in the build-up, and the angles of that incident could not prove conclusively that the ball had gone out of play. But I mean, we're talking millimetres here. It didn't seem to me like a clear and obvious error, if in all honesty. So I think that'll be the issue. What is clear and obvious, and are we going to be denying things for things that no one would have objected to in the past? But we'll see. I mean, the handball rule next season is going to baffle me. I mean, I know we're getting it in the Premier League next year, aren't we? So it didn't look like a deliberate handball to me. I'm glad for Manchester United's sake that it was given and it added to the drama at the end, but if I was a PSG fan, I'd be pretty gutted this morning.
A limb in an unnatural position, no longer allowed.
Well, it didn't look that unnatural to me. That was the thing. He was turning his back, but I mean, what was he supposed to do? I just think it's going to be open to interpretation, and not for me, not with that one. But look, as I say, I'm glad that it was given, because just for the pure drama of watching it as a neutral, it was just the most incredible denouement to a tie, a fantastic tie between two excellent teams.
The suggestion that VAR may sterilise the game and take all controversy out of it, it's absolutely out of this.
No chances. I mean, people will be as infuriated, I think, this time next year. They'll be infuriated by right decisions as well. That's the thing. I mean, because it will become so pernickety, and tiny margins. And look, people will argue that it's right, and therefore, goals should be given or not on the basis of what the VAR says. But it's just whether a clear and obvious error is made, and to me that is if a player is 2 yards offside or something like that. I mean, or a handball punches the ball into the net. It's not whether the ball possibly a millimetre was overhanging the line in the build-up to a goal, which, I mean, we're talking a few moves down as well. So we'll see. I mean, it will adapt. It's just taking the time to adjust and to adapt to the new system.
Something we haven't seen for a long time. So Alex Ferguson in a dressing room with a manager, is that all but the man elected into that job, surely?
I'd be amazed if he wasn't already effectively appointed behind the scenes, and they're just waiting on the timing of the announcement, because no one could have seen what he was going to do there. And the first few weeks you're looking at the galvanising effect and putting the smile back on the faces of the squad. Fine, that's what you would expect of a new manager, particularly after the sort of rather dour and gloomy end to Jose Mourinho's tenure there. But for him to then be demonstrating sort of tactical nous in the way he sets up 4 games, but also the way he adjusts in games. I mean, Eric Bailly had an absolute stinker at Parc des Princes and was hauled off early, which, the tactical tweak and the willingness, it sort of reminded actually of Mourinho back in his pomp when he enjoyed being a football manager, and would be quite happily change things up within games, trusted his players to adapt to that. And Solskjaer has been a breath of fresh air. I'm in no way am I a Manchester United supporter, but it's actually been quite heartening to see sort of a United team that looks more like a United team, that's enjoying playing their football, and are playing with a vim and a verve and a proper energy in their play. But again, it's just the antidote to what preceded it, and the poison of the last few months of Mourinho's tenure, unfortunately.
And he is that relaxed in the tunnel, behind the scenes, pre-match, post-match, and that with a young team is just so important. And bringing through young players, as we saw again last night.
Well, look at that! Look at the players on that pitch, and I think they got 10 senior injuries, haven't they? And to have the confidence in these kids to come in, because he knows they've got quality, but okay, they've not shown it on that stage before. But he knows full well they've got energy, and that was a string to United's bow. I mean, it was a weapon to have that energy in that team. I mentioned also for Marcus Rashford, because to have the balls to take that penalty, I mean, my word, given the sort of hiatus in play from the original handball that they hardly appealed for. I think Dallo had done a little appeal, and then to be able to sort of keep a clear head with the PSG players having words in his ear. I mean, that actually shows a lot of it's good news for England as well. Good news for Gareth Southgate. He's got players there that will stand up to be counted. Magnificent, wonderful achievement, and ice cold in the way he took the penalty.
Did it against Colombia as well, though, didn't he? Let's also then look to Ajax and Real Madrid. And is that Solari out of a job, do you think?
I don't see how you recover from successive defeats to Barcelona at home and then lose to Ajax in that fashion, and to be utterly outplayed as well. It wasn't a fluke. They could have scored more than 4. Which is in itself superb to see, because I think most clubs in the world will look to Ajax and say, look, if we could run our football like that and produce players of that quality, that would be the ideal model to follow. Admittedly, the Dutch league allows clubs like that to produce players of that, to nurture them and bring them through, which maybe Premier League clubs would struggle to do to a certain extent, although we have seen United blooding youngsters recently. But it was astonishing the way they just took Real apart, as they had done actually in Amsterdam, and been unlucky. A VAR counted against them on that evening as well. But it's a big moment for Real Madrid. It's sort of, it almost feels a vindication of why Zinedine Zidane decided to leave. He obviously saw the writing on the wall. The transfer policy at that club has changed in recent years. They've sort of been reliant upon the same old figures, and maybe they thought that they could just get by without Cristiano Ronaldo this season. They clearly can't. They have got great players in their squad still. People like Luka Modric, the World Player of the Year, but he's not the same kind of player as a Ronaldo, who will take a game by the scruff of the neck and suddenly produce a moment of magic to win you a tie or a Champions League. So it's a big moment for them, and 24 hours later, for people to be talking about Mourinho going back to the Bernabeu, I mean, you'd never have seen that coming a few years back, would you? And imagine, towards the end of his time at Old Trafford as well, to think that this is a potential Real Madrid manager again in a few months' time would be unthinkable. But it's been a miserable season at the Bernabeu, absolutely awful for Real, and big things have got to change there. And you wonder whether they go back into the lavish spending policies of previous years in the summer, which would have implications for Premier League clubs, not least where we're sitting now here at Chelsea with the interest they have in Eden Hazard.
And of course, the other big result of this week, Tottenham, who measured expectations at the start of this season, but getting into that quarter-final stage is a huge achievement. Yeah,
it is, and it is exactly the right fillip for them after a recent stutter in the Premier League with a couple of defeats and the draw to Arsenal. Superb achievement. Nothing but admiration for what Mauricio Pochettino has done there. I do think at some point they're going to have to win something, and I'm not convinced that they'll necessarily win the Champions League this season. But I still think it's a fantastic achievement, and a lot of other sides will be looking at Tottenham Hotspur and hoping they don't get them in the quarterfinals. That was a fine result in its own right. I mean, they weathered a bit of a storm, and then plucked a goal on the counter-attack, brilliantly taken by Harry Kane. Nice to see him back playing with the confidence of pre-injury again. And they will be daunting opponents whoever draws them in the last 8. I mean, they're a good team, and with Dele Alli coming back into training this week as well, they've got a potentially winnable game at Southampton, I think, the weekend. They have to get a result there just to keep off the 3 clubs that are now snapping at their heels for Champions League qualification places. But I just think that Pochettino's just done brilliantly well. But it's almost become cliche to say that, hasn't it? Because you can't really pick fault in it other than the lack of silverware itself.
Very upset about his 2-match ban, rightly so, or?
Yeah, in the context of what other managers and players have got away with, I think it is very harsh, to be honest. I'm thinking, Jurgen Klopp. I mean, he can go into the look. He knew he'd done wrong. He admitted he'd done wrong. But I just think a bit of perspective and maybe a bit putting it into context with the sort of furious reactions of other managers at other clubs. 2-match seemed excessive, but.
Yeah, and there was a conversation there which rather sparked things on as well, which we don't go into detail on.
I'm actually intrigued that hasn't come out, because it seemed to me that he was suggesting that something had been said.
It's clear that he was walking away and something was overheard and he went back and talked about it.
But it's quite noble of him not to reveal that. And if he has chosen not to say something and yet has incurred a 2-match ban for his reaction, then I wonder what happens next time he has a rage on the touchline. Yeah,
and he's had to put up with a few refereeing controversy. Clattenburg, after revealing later about the Battle of the Bridge that he might have been swayed by the pressure on him. So he's kept very quiet, kept a real counsel on that as well, and expected to talk about it exclusively in the media, and he rather doused those Clattenburg flames, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, but he's quite a sensible man, isn't he? And he is. He's a very different character in his press conferences, whether they be post-match or actually pre-match press conferences down at the training ground. He's quite a different character then, and he's always been able to draw the line with during the game, and that was a rare occurrence. Him sort of losing the plot, so to speak, at Turf Moor. And I admired the way he came out and apologised and said it wasn't right, because the more things we look, you look at Kepa, it's what kids and supporters see, and you want to try and prevent them from repeating all this, on the pitches on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon or whatever. And him coming out and saying, "Look, I did that wrong," I thought that was the right message to send out. But I think, he's clearly shocked and surprised that, despite that apology, the FA have come down very hard on him.
We're going into the Chelsea match against Dynamo Kiev. You would expect nothing more than a win. Dynamo Kiev have their top scorer suspended and their striker was injured at the weekend, so he's out of the match. What is fascinating, though, is that you have Hudson-Odoi and Loftus-Cheek on the bench again for a Europa League match when I was pitchside Borussia Dortmund with their head of player development saying the reason that Sancho will stay here is because he's on the team sheet for a Champions League knockout stage match, and they're not even starting.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised one of them isn't playing. I think Hudson-Odoi is the one that people have latched onto, and it's almost as if Sarri's yet to be completely convinced he can trust the teenager in one of those roles. So he's gone for the more disciplined, more experienced Willian and Pedro, with Hazard also rested. So I'm surprised. And look, there is an issue that will not go away with Hudson-Odoi because Bayern Munich won't go away. So Chelsea still face a fight to retain him in the summer, regardless of how often he plays in the Premier League or Europa League in what remains of this season. With Loftus-Cheek, it's slightly different. I think Loftus-Cheek still struggles with the position he's supposed to play. He's used him wide up top. He's used him wide in a midfield three. At Palace last year, he was wide on a four on the left of midfield, and it's almost as if I want to say his versatility, but we can't really say it's his versatility yet because no one has really given him a proper chance to have a run of games apart from Palace last season when he did so well in the Premier League. Sarri looks at him as somebody that can offer a bit of power and a bit of muscular aggression late on in games against tiring opponents, and it would surprise me if he didn't come on in that role again tonight at some stage. But yeah, I agree. When we went to Wembley to watch the Carabao Cup final and he brought on Loftus-Cheek and Hudson-Odoi, the lift,
brilliant.
The lift it gave the crowd and the whole place. You look at it now sometimes and you wonder whether that was a cynical ploy because he was at the lowest ebb then. And he needed to win people over, so giving these guys games won people over. Hopefully they get game time tonight. Hopefully Chelsea effectively settle the tie this evening and they can both start the game over in Ukraine next Thursday, but I think both of them have still got some convincing to do.
Well, after the high winds disrupted things for Liverpool, looking ahead to this weekend, what will be the key factor in the title race, do you think?
Wow, well, Liverpool playing catch-up now, sort of, a point down. Burnley, isn't it? Burnley for Liverpool. Burnley have lost their last two, but you'd expect them to be quite stubborn opponents at Anfield in that one. That's that could potentially be an awkward fixture, but I just feel that Liverpool will click again, and that front three will click again. And when they do, they may not dazzle in the same way that they did last season, because I think all round they're a far more solid unit this time, and they're geared towards defending as well. But at some stage they will do what they did to Watford when they blitzed them 5-0. They could potentially do that again to anyone that comes to Anfield. So Burnley will have to be at their obstinate best to get anything at that fixture. But it is interesting, the slight change in dynamic between Liverpool now just playing a slight game of catch up with City. Have got Watford, I think, and have got a good record against Watford, generally speaking, although Watford on their day can cause their own problems. But I mean, look, let's get this right, the biggest fixture of the weekend has got to be Palace-Brighton, hasn't it? I mean, the derby, the one that everyone's talking about, aren't they?
All they're talking about, the most local of local derbies. Just quickly, do you think it makes a difference? Pochettino said of that famous race between them and Leicester that they were always playing second and that affected them. Do you think this puts Liverpool at an advantage?
Well, no, not really, because they've been swapping over of late and each taking it in turns to go first and second. So I think we're still in mid-March. Let's see what's happening with the fixtures in mid-April and that run-in, because I do think it will be that tight. I think that they'll go toe-to-toe throughout the next few weeks. And as I say, I think Liverpool will click again, and City, is interesting to see how they cope without injured players in the Premier League as well, because Fernandinho is still a miss, Kevin De Bruyne is still a miss, Laporte is one of their best defenders this season, so there are issues there, and in the past when City had that blip, when they lost to Palace and Leicester before Christmas, it was because Fernandinho wasn't around. So I think there'll be a few twists and turns yet, but let's wait for the head-to-heads until mid-April.
Thank you very much for joining us. Covered the world. Thank you so much.